Okay, we're cutting across live now to the Chief Economic Advisor to the government on the economic survey that's been tabled.
Space and in the private sector space, there is strategic competitiveness. So therefore, efficiency considerations have given way to resilience and supply side security considerations. The value of trade covered under the new import restrictions was as low as $170 billion in 2014-15. Now it's more than $1 trillion, $1.3 trillion. So effectively, I think both import-export and investment flows are being looked at through the prism of strategic competition. And that is a new world which may be with us for quite some time to come, and therefore we need to get used to operating in this space. As a result, world FDI net inflows as a percentage of GDP has come down from around 5% in the first decade to around 1% of GDP. And world exports as a share of world GDP peaked, even though it may not have come down as much as investment flows have come down. Clearly, it is on a declining trend compared to the ascending trend we saw towards the end of the last millennium and in the first decade. One of the outcomes of the globalization era was also the rise of China as a manufacturing power. India also rose as a power in global services. So what has happened in the last 25, 30 years, and it is continuing even now, is in several high-tech, medium-tech areas, the presence of China is pervasive and dominant, and the manufacturing as a share of world gross output, China's share will probably be higher than the combined share of the next 10 countries. It gives them a lot of strategic levers and advantage in several areas, as we will see later in some other dimensions as well. This is an important development along with globalization in the last 40 years. Now, along with the dominance in manufacturing, in terms of the materials and minerals required for global energy transition, let's first take a look at the solar energy. Global demand in 2010 was, China's share of the global demand was very small, and therefore China's production capacity in those areas was also quite small comparatively. But fast forward 11 years later, while demand has grown even within China, but the production capacity in that country has grown even more than demand, basically giving them an important lever in terms of the source of supply for all ingredients and components related to energy transition. And if you happen to see the September 2024 report of Mr. Mario Draghi on the European competitiveness, the entire 75-page report is full of European concerns about the concentration risk that is there with respect to one country as a source of supply for all critical components and technologies with respect to energy transition and manufacturing, etc. Moving on from solar energy to electric mobility, if you look at the key materials that go into it, copper, lithium, nickel, cobalt, graphite, and the rare earth materials, the dominance, and this is a slide which we have shown you back in July 2024 as well, the dominance of one country is quite clear. And in different stages of production, even if those materials are not mined in one country, the processing happens in a single country, and therefore, whether it is the cell components or battery cells, in fact, the truth is every single panel, solar panel we install, every single electric vehicle that we produce in this country, naturally the dependence on a single source for supply keeps increasing. So that dependence has to be kept in mind in the pace of transition towards renewable energies and also with respect to electric mobility. So this is the global context, that the era of globalization, faster and larger movement of trade and goods and services and investments is behind us. And there is a huge presence of a single country, a phenomena that we have not seen in a very long time, at least since World War II. So given this, naturally, we have to raise the game for a new playing field. The playing field has changed. And the game has to rely on domestic drivers of growth. So what are those domestic drivers of growth? That is what is part 2 about. Just to recap, we do have a goal, a legitimate economic and social aspiration to become a developed country by 2047. The last economic survey broke it down into multiple components, generating about 80 lakh jobs per year, increasing our share of manufacturing in GDP, plugging Indian businesses into global value chains, and creating a viable small, medium enterprise sector, which in the German language is called the Mittelstand. Because countries that basically became powerhouses in manufacturing had succeeded in creating a viable small medium enterprise sector. Therefore, our goal with respect to manufacturing is inextricably tied to the success of being able to raise the share of SME enterprises as well. Therefore, what is the action? The action is we have to raise our game on domestic growth. And how do we do that? There are 4 dimensions to it. One is deregulation for growth, augmenting internal capacities for growth, the role of the private sector in nation building, and doing energy transition the Indian way. First, we start with the deregulation for growth. Now, when we talk of deregulation, it is not even big ticket deregulation or dismantling of the licensing era, which happened in 1991 and pursued by governments over the last 30 plus years. We are talking about the nuts and bolts or the plumbing of deregulation, which particularly affect enterprises, be they in services or be they in manufacturing, which affect them in terms of the time and the resource bandwidth that they have. And these are related to local level rules, laws, and regulations. So this is the deregulation exercise, which will probably not be a news story in the front pages, but that kind of deregulation at the local and the state government level have to happen pervasively for us not only to boost MSMEs, to boost manufacturing, but also to lift the potential GDP growth in the country. And this applies in the areas of labor and even in the education sector as well. We'll share with you a few examples. These are the areas where I think the regulations that are there today affect the day-to-day activities of businesses that don't have the kind of bandwidth which large enterprises have. Whether it is in land, building and construction, utilities, logistics, and there are sector-specific deregulation areas, and you can see more of them in Chapter 5 and also across other chapters in the economic survey.